Welcome to 4C Radio. We are broadcasting from the Christ University Central Campus, Bangalore. 4C Radio is brought to you by the Department of Media Studies, Christ University. For all who are looking for a platform that focuses on communities, commons, climate, and communication, this is the place to be. What's more, this station is run by the diverse students and dedicated faculty of Christ University. Tune in to experience hard-hitting interviews, fact checks, myth-busting, on-ground stories, campus news, and all the creative expressions of our community. In today's inaugural program, we are thrilled to have Dr. Madhav Gadgil on our show. Dr. Gadgil is an Indian ecologist who founded the Center for Ecological Studies at IISc Bangalore, headed the Western Ghats Ecological Expert Panel of 2010, and was instrumental in establishing India's first biosphere reserve, Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. He has been awarded both the Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan for his relentless conservation work. In 2024, Madhav Gadgil was chosen as the UN Champion of the Earth. Let's listen in as we present excerpts from Dr. Madhav Gadgil's interview with our very own Prachi Pinglay.
It is that time of the year when weather in Bengaluru is divine. Traffic, of course, is nightmarish, and we drink copious amounts of coffee while waiting for weekends. But just a cursory glance over newspapers or news on social media, things are much more disturbing. It is all about floods or flash floods, and sometimes destruction of life and property. In 2024, India experienced 322 extreme weather days, heat or rains. That is around 88% of the days that year had. It had severe fluctuations in climate. This affects the economy, agriculture, and human life. According to a report in Down to Earth, 3,472 people died due to various causes related to extreme weather, an increase of 15% in 3 years. These increasing natural hazards become tragic man-made disasters, be it frequent droughts in Maharashtra, floods in Uttarakhand, or landslides in Wayanad that killed hundreds of people and destroyed homes. This isn't something we don't know. As early as 2011, Dr. Madhav Gadgil Committee had studied the Western Ghats and recommended measures to preserve them. The report warned of severe consequences if the fragile ecosystem that runs through the mountain ranges from Maharashtra to Kerala was not protected from rampant construction and development. At his residence in Pune, we discussed the report, issues pertaining to climate change, and what lies ahead for us. We asked him how he felt about the report being hailed for its warnings.
It is unfortunate, of course, that tragedies have to happen before people appreciate what we have been saying. But I'm very happy the report, if you will look at it, maybe is very different from most governmental reports because we have tried to not be, as they say, politically correct, but empirically correct. And I undertook a fair amount of fieldwork for the report, stayed with people in the Western Ghats, Maharashtra and Goa. Earlier I had done a lot of that in Karnataka, limited extent in Kerala and Tamil Nadu also. So all of that has gone in and it portrays what is going on, including corruption at various levels in the bureaucracy and political authorities also. All of that was put down quite frankly. Luckily, at that time, one unusual politician, Jairam Ramesh, was Minister of Environment and Forests, and he fully supported this. I spent almost 30 years working in Western Ghats of Karnataka, so we had got to know each other, and he was very supportive. So all of this could be done. And the report was submitted. Of course, immediately there was a whole lot of recommendations which were appropriate. Then there were these 2018 great floods in Kerala. And then people began to see that our recommendations, I won't go into specific details, but many of them made great sense. This disaster would have been averted.
However, when the report first came out, it created a furor of sorts. From rejection to misinformation, the committee and especially Dr. Gadgil faced various reactions, which were a bit unfair in hindsight.
There is a lot of misconceptions which were spread as if the report was as usual in the mode where development is imposed on people and all sorts of decisions, maybe about mining or polluting industries, are imposed on people, and conservation, nature conservation, is also imposed on people by being administered through a tyrannical and anti-people forest department. But they were, forcing people to accept this. There were a lot of things which were very wrong with destruction of natural resources and with adverse impacts on people. There was this big campaign against our report. We have done a proper job and our recommendations I stand by. There was also this attempt at discrediting us through a Kasturi Rangan committee, which made a report which people called dilution of our recommendations. It was a perversion of our recommendations. Kasturi Rangan committee has a specific statement. How can local communities have any say in economic decision making? So if a rock quarry above your village is leading to landslides and killing people, as was happening in Kuttikkal in Kerala, people have no right to complain against those rock quarries on top of their hill, because that's an economic decision. That's the kind of statement that Kasturi Rangan came up with. I, in fact, openly challenged him. I wrote an open letter to Dr. Kasturi Rangan in Hindu, which made many of these points. He never replied, or no single committee member replied at that time.
Dr. Gadgil minces no words in explaining how the acceptance of the report came only after the privileged class was affected by the floods.
And very interestingly, other disasters such as this Meppadi landslide, it adversely affects the poorer classes of our people. The tea estate laborers, by and large, are the ones to be crushed in the landslide. The tea estate owners have their own mansions on the flat land, and they have their friends have their tourist resort in Wayanad with their lakes, putting further pressure on the geological structure. They are enjoying life. The great floods, it is not just the poorer classes, but the well-to-do also, they were adversely affected. I think that had a major influence. Suddenly people began to see that we had been recommending had clearly made sense. So there was these floods, and then series of landslides at Puttuvala, very close to Meppadi. I think it was 2019 anyway. So 2019 probably. It was clear that whatever we had been saying about what should be done, if it had been implemented in terms of this being a highly classified Western Ghats into ecologically highly sensitive, medium sensitivity and low sensitivity. This was highly sensitive, and our recommendations about no further roads or buildings on steep slopes, etc. had been followed. There is good chance that the rock quarry is not being initiated in that area. With all this, a landslide would have been averted.
Environmentalists, scientists, and activists have been raising the issue of rampant development at the cost of destruction of environment, not to mention the impact of climate change that is constantly aggravating the situation. However, there is a far more important aspect of all this that often gets neglected. Who is at the receiving end of this cycle of construction and destruction? More often than not, it is the most marginalized local communities who may have traditionally even looked after the forests and the mountains. These are the people who lose their homes, livelihoods, and even their lives when things go wrong and nature takes its own course. During our conversation, Dr. Gadgil spoke about how climate change affects the poor, how policy and development neglects the local and marginalized communities.
I think one of the most serious problems in India today is this disconnect between the relatively well-off, better educated urban citizens and the masses of people. Of course, some of them are in the slums around the cities, and others are trying to eke out a living through some roadside shop, a domestic service and so on. And larger areas where, apart from the larger landholders in irrigated tracts, the smaller farmers, by and large the fisher folk, the forest dwellers in the tribal areas, they are going to suffer in a very different fashion. Let me take some concrete examples which will illustrate this. The fishing communities, the polluting industries, the wealth that is being generated by these polluting industries. For instance, on our Konkan coast in Maharashtra, there is this major controversy at area called Barsu village, where some big petrochemical complex is proposed to be put up. Now, a lot of money will be made through this petrochemical complex, and this will be reflected in the national income. Every day, we will read in the newspapers, India is having 6.4% growth rate. It will improve next year to 8.4%. But local communities, they are largely fishing communities, and they are going to be wiped out. Their whole livelihood basis is going to be wiped out. The only option that will remain before them, stay in some urban slums and take very poorly paid jobs, in particular in the burgeoning building industries. Who gives hoot for what happens to the poorer, marginalized people? So there is no question that climate change, as it advances, is going to be more and more extreme events, severe floods or severe droughts, and they will affect particularly the farmers very poorly. And of course, even today, something like 60% of India depends on farming sector. So there is no question that as the climate change progresses, then we will see this kind of unfair sharing of the burden.
According to a report in Article 14, around 14 million people have been displaced due to various factors related to climate change. In the next 25 years, the number is likely to more than triple to 45 million people. As Dr. Gadgil pointed out, the unfair share of burden of impact of climate change is borne by those who rarely ever cause it and, most of the time, are actually protectors of Mother Nature.
In the next part of this interview, we will listen to Dr. Gadgil as he talks about people he met on his journey, how some inspired him, how the sacrifices of some remains etched in his mind, and why scientists must speak to people and speak in the language of the people. This episode was edited by Srinivas Aditya, illustrated by Vernika Singh. The interview was conducted by Prachi Pinglay, Dr.Meljo Thomas, and Dr. Shatharaju at the residence of Dr. Madhav Gadgil earlier this year. Please write to us and follow 4C Radio on Instagram and X. Until next time, be curious and ask questions. 4C Radio is an initiative by the Department of Media Studies, Christ University, Bangalore.